So, let's get these traditional formalities out of the way. I'm Sam, 53, from the wonderful rural county of Yorkshire in the north of England. I have been married to Angela for 7 years now, having met her 9 years ago. I was widowed after the sad passing of my first wife, Amanda, Mandy to me. She succumbed to cancer at the age of just 42, leaving me and our 4-year-old daughter, Jessica, completely devastated. After Mandy's death, I was broken, but honored the promise I made at her bedside to keep living, not to grieve forever, and to make Jessica's childhood as happy as possible. 2 years after Mandy's death, I met Angela. We met at the launch of a new wine bar and bistro in York. I was there with friends, and she was heading up the public relations team, providing lots of meet and greets and flirting, especially with me. She was divorced, completely unexpectedly cheated on by her husband, with whom she had lived for 20-plus years. She was deeply hurt by being left for another woman, and was left with bitterness towards any man caught cheating. Actors, athletes, politicians, she berated them all. It seemed strange to me that any man could cheat on her, because she was a very attractive, elegant lady who knew how to dress and was proud of herself. I was against cheating, too. I had been a police officer for 30 years and had witnessed too many of my colleagues take risks and then lose their happy lifestyle for casual sex or an affair. Why they thought the grass would be greener on the other side of the fence was a complete mystery to me. Their stories were always the same. They met their true soulmate, left their wife and kids, got hit financially in the subsequent divorce, and then regretted leaving it all. I had little sympathy for them when they wanted to share their grief with me. I wasn't with my first wife out of choice. She was taken from me by cancer. They, on the other hand, made a conscious decision to give up what they had and are now miserable. My misery was imposed and I resented it. I never stopped thinking about Mandy, even after I met Angela. I got sad from time to time when Jessica asked about her mom, but Angela was very kind to her and they became close. I loved being our little community, but Angela always felt like she was being compared. Perhaps subconsciously I did compare, but I never said anything. In my experience, women have a sixth sense about such things, and I have to admit that Mandy was my real one. But I love them both, albeit in slightly different ways. Notice I say love and not loved, as I will always have fond memories of Mandy and love Angela very much. I retired as an officer at the age of 49, and at first I didn't do any paid work for a while, doing homemade crafts, traveling, golfing, and biking, and then I decided I had enough free time and needed to find a job. I tried a few different options, but eventually went back to the police force, this time as a civilian. Around this time, I began to notice some changes in myself, physically and emotionally. Physically, I wasn't feeling well. I lacked energy and went from being a passionate lover to a bored, not-tonight person. My libido was completely absent, and I had no idea why things had changed. Maybe it was the drastic change in lifestyle after retirement. Whatever it was frustrating for Angela and me. One day, out of the blue, Angela asked me, "Are you seeing someone else?" "What?" I replied. "Why would you say that?" "Because you don't show any interest in me," she said firmly. "And we haven't made love since you retired." I was completely stunned, but she was right. We hadn't had intimacy in months, and as usual, I was putting problems aside when I couldn't deal with them. I hugged her and burst into tears before quickly assuring her that I hadn't cheated on her. I then sat her down and listed all the things that were bothering me. Lack of libido was one thing, but I also felt like I was losing strength in my legs and stumbling too often. There were times when I would just walk to the store like I was drunk. My legs just weren't doing what my brain was asking them to do. We hugged again and agreed that we needed medical intervention. An appointment was made with Dr. Brown, a neurologist, who thoroughly checked our coordination, reflexes, and balance, after which he leaned back in his chair, took off his glasses, and asked what we thought the problem might be. Angela quickly said we weren't looking that far ahead, but I had already consulted with Dr. Google and came out with the following. I think I probably have either MS, multiple sclerosis, or even worse, MND, motor neuron disease. I knew the outcome was going to be bad either way, but almost hoped I had MS as I realized the enormity and inevitability of MND. Dr. Brown was great. He smiled and looked at me comfortingly. "There is something about it. But it's neither, and I'm sure the problem is your spine causing nerve problems. I covered my face with my hands and burst into tears, just in time to say thank you. Let's get an MRI and decide how we will treat you, he said. I felt a huge relief, and when the diagnosis was finally made, an arterial anomaly putting pressure on the nerves in the spinal cord, the necessary surgery was already scheduled. 3 weeks later, the surgery was done, and after another week I was home, in a lot of pain and discomfort, but glad to have met Dr. Brown. Had I not sought help, it turned out I would have been stricken with paralysis of my lower extremities 6 months later. The recovery was very difficult and took a lot of effort from all of us. But over time, gradually gaining strength and taking my time, I got much better. I was told that the surgery had been successful, but could not repair all the damage already done to my nerves, so I would have to accept the fact that I would not be able to run or bike as fast as I used to. I, on the other hand, was just glad not to be using a wheelchair and was determined to get as close to my old self as I could. Another thing that was corrected was my libido. Some blood tests showed that my pituitary gland was not functioning, so my body was not producing testosterone as it should. This was easily corrected with injections every 10 weeks. And this was the result. Now life could get back to normal, or so I thought. I talked to Angela and told her that I felt like a man again and wanted us to try to get our sexual spark back. She looked a little concerned and said that she herself hadn't had any urges for some time now. She said that menopause had taken its toll and that she no longer felt sexy. I assured her that I found her very sexy, but told her that I understood and was glad that she needed to adjust to life after menopause, but that we could seek help from her doctor. We agreed to give her time and see how things went. As time went on, I found myself wanting her more and more. I remembered how much we had enjoyed sex not too long ago and found her more and more attractive. I remembered our first intimate night together, when she was blown away by my lovemaking skills. For our first romantic night as a couple, we had decided to stay in a posh hotel, and the 4-poster bed was particularly luxurious. "Oh my God, Sam, this is just amazing. I've never had a lover like you before. Thank you." Then she started crying. I didn't know if it was from realizing what she had missed or from elation, but it didn't matter. I wasn't done yet. "Don't thank me, Angela, and anyway, we're not done yet. Roll over and point yourself in my direction," I demanded. She threw me a very brief, slightly shocked look, quickly replaced by a cheeky and not-so-guilty smile. She did as I asked, and I did it doggy-style with her until I was ready to explode. That first time we made love still lingers in my memory and makes me blush when I think about it. But that was almost 7 years ago, and it felt like we were a long way from where we were now. Our sex life was fantastic until my spinal abnormality and pituitary insufficiency got the better of me. Angela loves sex. There were times she would be waiting for me when I finished a late shift, wearing the sexiest lingerie from Victoria's Secret or Ann Summers. When I got home, she would practically pounce on me, and on one of those occasions, she would stand at the door in just her white panties and smile. "Now, Sam," she urged, "there's no time for dinner. You're going to eat me as dessert tonight." She led me into the kitchen and sat me on the bar next to an array of sweet syrups and sauces, including honey, Nutella, yogurt, and whipped cream. Then we had a wonderful night of sex, combining lovemaking. It was the best sex of our lives for both of us, and we giggled about it for weeks afterward. So, back to today, or rather 6 weeks ago. We were doing well, or so it seemed to me. We were spending time together, watching TV, going for walks, and had recently returned from a little vacation in Scarborough. While watching a documentary on C4 about unusual couples and their bizarre sexual fetishes, a program was shown about a famous cheating website. This was the site that accidentally leaked the personal information of its users in the US, which embarrassed many hundreds of people. I commented that these cheaters got what they deserved, and we laughed about how they would try to explain their membership to their wives and husbands. A few days later, as I was browsing one of the well-known adult sites, the same cheating site came up on the screen. Admittedly, I was curious, so I logged onto it. I was curious to see what women had to say through their ads. The site called it a profile. So I created a scrawled fake account. It was originally free, but if I wanted to send messages, I would have had to buy some very expensive tokens. I wasn't going to do anything, so I skipped that part. However, I now had access to profiles and blurry photos of all sorts of women, and some of what was written was quite explicit. Others were housewives who were bored and looking for excitement, and some were just singles looking for partners. I wondered why a single woman would choose this particular site over Tinder, POF, or any of the usual online dating sites. Another thing I discovered was that while men were required to pay for full membership, women could join for free. A bit unfair in these times of equality, I thought. I created an account for Ben, 45 years old. Okay, I discounted a few years. Married but bored and willing to meet regularly for sex. I was happy to travel, but only wanted non-committal fun as I didn't want to risk my marriage. It was a pretty vanilla description, but I only stated the highlights as I didn't expect or want any messages. I looked through all the profiles, there were hundreds of them, so I narrowed it down to women within a 50-mile radius of me. I used Leeds as my city as it was only 20 miles away. I also specified an age range of 40 to 60 to see how many there would be. There turned out to be 35 potential cheaters in a fairly small radius. I was surprised, but found it interesting. I read through them all. Of particular interest was wife dogging 51 inches from Leeds. Her profile was as follows. Hi, I love sex. I love doing it. Send me your pictures and I will invite you to fuck me in front of my husband in handcuffs. That was it. No description of herself, no mention of hobbies, no mention of the ages of the men she wanted. I was quite amused by the self-assuredness and boldness of the dogging wife of 60 years. Surely no man would agree to something so blatant, I thought. And what kind of women go here? But some of the commercials portrayed much more normal people. Many women actually praised their husbands and made it clear that they wouldn't do anything to jeopardize their marriages or lifestyles. I even sympathized with these women as they all said the same thing. They lacked intimacy and the feeling of being wanted or desired. I sympathized with them because I knew what it was like to love someone, yet suffer from a lack of intimacy. Essentially, like me, they were married for love, but they lacked sex. I couldn't justify their desire to cheat, but I also understood their pain and frustration. Flipping through the pages, I came across single Christina, 55. She was from York and loved her husband, but was no longer in love with him. She enjoyed his company, but loved him more as a brother than a lover, and wanted someone to rekindle her passion. There were two aspects that immediately attracted me to this profile. The first is that she is from York, as our village is on the outskirts of that city. The second is her first name, as Christina is Angela's middle name. It must be a coincidence, I thought, or should I say hoped. Then, something else struck me. Why did this site come up when I was watching adult movies? I'm not a computer expert, but I know that some sites track IP addresses. Maybe it came up because someone was watching it from our IP address? Now my brain put 2 plus 2 together and it worked out to be 5. At first I didn't do anything about it. I didn't dare text Lonely Christine 55 inches for fear of what she might say, but I had a sick feeling and felt I had to find out. I remembered Angela asking me if I was cheating when I was going through my zero sex drive phase before my diagnosis. If I was okay with her asking me, surely she wouldn't be okay with me asking her the same question, right? Wrong! So, we were sitting around watching TV. Jessica was in her room talking to her friends on Instagram or something, so it was just the two of us. Angela, can I ask you something and please don't get mad? I said nervously. Of course, honey, you can ask me anything, she replied softly. This evening I sensed that something was on your mind, and I immediately asked, are you cheating on me, or will you ever cheat on me? Her answer was quick and measured. Damn it, Sam, where the hell did you get that from? It's just that you're not interested in me lately. Do you still find me attractive? I asked. The brief pause before answering made me fear the worst, but then she said, Of course I do. You are still a very handsome man. Unfortunately, this was followed by a statement that every man in this situation fears. It's not you, it's me. We hugged and she said I have nothing to worry about. She's going to see the doctor we talked about earlier and she's sure she'll find something that can help rekindle the fire of her passion. She suggested we go to bed, so we did. When we settled down, we assumed our usual pose. I cuddled up to her, wrapping my arms around her breasts, lightly stroking but not caressing. After about 5 minutes, she turned her head slightly and whispered for me to lie on my back after a wonderful time. "What do you think, Sam?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did." What could I say except, "Damn, Angela, that was amazing. But why the sudden change? You've never done this before." She just kissed me on the cheek and said goodnight, and that was the end of it. No explanation, and although I was completely satisfied, I couldn't help but wonder what made her suddenly turn into such a passionate lady. Nevertheless, I slept well. The next morning passed as if nothing had happened, and there was no talk of my amazing bedtime treat. Angela left for work, and I played a Thursday morning round of golf with some guys I knew from the clubhouse. When I got home, I was feeling very horny. All morning I remembered that night, and because of my lack of concentration, my golf game suffered. I got on my iPad, turned on private browsing, and went to the cheating website. To my surprise, there was a little pink dot indicating that I had received a message. I looked and was shocked to see that it was from Lonely Christina, 55 inches, and read, "Hi, I see that you recently viewed my profile. Thanks for stopping by. I like your profile, but would love to know more about you. It looks like we live pretty close to each other. I am married, but looking for some NSA fun with a younger man. I don't want to ruin my marriage as my husband is a good man, but I need sex and he doesn't excite me anymore. Do you think you could make me horny, Ben?" I didn't know what to write, so it was simple, and I decided to be clever by adding some fishhooks. Since she texted me, I could reply without spending any money, so I wrote, "Hi, Lonely Christine 55. Thank you for writing to me. I'm sorry to hear that your husband isn't doing this for you. Is he much older than you? I'm a retired police officer. What do you do for a living? Yes, I'd love to make you welcome." And with the press of a button, the message went away. I didn't get a reply right away, but it was only the beginning of the day, and I assumed most people were busy during the day. Angela came home as usual and greeted me as usual with a peck on the cheek. I said I had made a casserole for tea, and did she want it now or later? She said later because she needed to do some work on her laptop, and she also wanted to take a shower before we sat down at the table. The evening went completely without incident. Jessica sat with us for a bit before going to bed, and we went to bed at our usual time as well. There was no repetition tonight, just cuddles and sleep. Angela left for work as usual, so I immediately got on the iPad. Sure enough, Lonely Christine, 55 inches, answered, "That's too bad, Ben. My husband is a former police officer, and I can't risk meeting someone he might know him. It's a shame, and you seemed perfect to me. If proof were needed, I'd think this is definitely it. Think outside the box, Sam." Then it hit me. "Hello? Lonesome Christine, 55. Yeah, sorry, but I was a police officer. I worked my whole career in South London, so I don't think I've ever worked with your husband. Do you have any photographs you can share? Ben." The next day she replied, "Ben, that's great. And no, my husband couldn't have known you at work. I'd rather not say what field I work in. I hope you can understand. I have some pictures, but I will only let you see them if I can see yours. To be clear, Ben, I don't care what you look like, so we can exchange pictures or just take a chance and meet up to hook up. And just so you know, Christina is not my real name, but it is my middle name. Let's meet up and have sex, Ben. Let me know when you're free." My heart skipped a few beats when I read that. This is 99% my Angela, the woman who was cheated on, who hated everyone who cheated, and now she's about to become one herself. Hell, maybe this isn't even the first sex encounter she's planned. How could she do this to me? Why am I suddenly not good enough for her? Why is she in danger of losing her husband and her adopted daughter? I was still looking at the iPad when Jessica came home from school. She asked if anything was wrong since I looked sad. Asked if I was up to my old tricks of looking at old pictures of me, Jessica, and her mom on the iPad and getting depressed, so I took the easy option and said yes. "Don't worry, Daddy," she said. "Mom would want us to be happy, and Angela is beautiful. I know she would approve." The irony of her words made me feel even worse, but I managed to pull myself together. How was I going to handle this? I decided that I needed to confide in one of my old cop friends, Mike. We'd done many assignments together, including the Bradford riots in the early noughties, and I trusted him more than anyone I'd ever worked with. He was stunned when I told him everything. He was still giving Angela the benefit of the doubt, saying it probably wasn't her after all. A lot of women have the middle name Christine, and her husband could have been any constable in Yorkshire. Even if it is her, it could just be dirty, flirty talk, and just because she suggested meeting up for sex doesn't mean it would be anything more than an online fantasy. A lot of people, he said, talk about it but don't really go for it. He compared it to if we men watched adult movies and fantasized about models. Mike agreed to work with me again on this undercover investigation. Angela had never met Mike, so she wouldn't suspect anything if he pretended to be 45-year-old Ben. He was actually 52, but my Angela was 59, so they would both be guilty of deception regarding age. We borrowed a spy micro camera and audio communication equipment, ready for the rendezvous. Mike was to meet lonely Christine, 55 inches, while I would watch and listen remotely in my car parked nearby. All I had to do was arrange a sexual encounter. Hi, lonely Christine, 55. Yes, let's meet up and hook up. I've got a room booked at the Travelodge on the A64 outside York for this Friday. I'll see you at 10 in the morning if you can make it. I knew she could make it, as every other Friday is her day off. Of course, came the reply. I'll see you there. I'll be wearing a long gray coat and carrying a brown mulberry purse. I'll see you at the front desk at 10. I'm not going in alone. It's too awkward. How will I recognize you? I answered right away. Dark hair, 5'10", black leather biker jacket, and jeans. I'll get the condoms. And with a press of the send button, the trap was set. For the next 2 days, I was nervous to the point where I felt constantly sick. Angela acted normal, but knew something was wrong with me. She kept asking what was wrong. Had she done something to upset me? Was it something with Jessica? I didn't pay much attention to it, but inside I was seething all the time. I dreaded Friday like a condemned man dreads execution day. I couldn't sleep Thursday night and watched in horror as Angela left on Friday morning for her betrayal. I was still hoping that I had gotten it all wrong and that it was just a coincidence. Angela came looking for me during the night and found me crying in the kitchen. She hugged me and begged me to tell her what had happened. I really wanted to tell her something I was 9% sure of, but I needed to know for sure. By telling her what was planned for Friday, she could deny everything and I would have no proof, just suspicions for life. So I told her I'd had a terrible dream, like I was going to lose her just like I'd lost Mandy all those years ago, and it seemed so real. She told me to stop being stupid and go back to bed. I said I would follow her, but decided to sleep on the couch in the living room instead. I woke up at 7:30 a.m. and made sure Jessica got ready for school before she got on the bus at 8:30. Angela came downstairs already dressed in jeans, heeled shoes, and a tight sweater that emphasized her still very slim body. "You look good," I said. "Are you going somewhere?" She answered casually. "Didn't I tell you I'm meeting the girls for an endless brunch today?" "No, I'm sure you would have remembered," I replied. "Oh, well, it's no big deal. Are you playing golf today?" she inquired. "No, love, but I have somewhere to go. I'll tell you about it when I see you later." "Oh, okay, bye then," was all she said. I hugged her and kissed her on the lips. Then she said, "I love you, Sam. Forget your bad dream. They never come true, and I believed mine was about to come true." I called Mike to tell him that Angela had left and he was coming to get me. We still had plenty of time to get everything ready, but I was so nervous that he had to pull over to let me throw up on the side of the road. Mike gave me some water and we drove to the motel. The equipment was simple, just a small laptop and an earpiece for me. Mike got out of the car and walked to the lobby before asking the receptionist where the bar was, then went back to the car to confirm that the equipment was working. I said I saw everything and clearly heard what he and the receptionist were saying. And then it hit me. We have no plan for what happens when she arrives to meet him. Obviously, the room isn't booked, but Angela can't know that. So after the first meeting, what should happen? We agreed that Mike would offer a Dutch manly drink at the bar, and I would have time to go in and meet them face to face. Mike would play innocent and leave us alone with what would follow an argument or discussion, but not give away that he was participating in deception. I wanted to see if she would confess and not have to reveal what I already knew. At 9:50 a.m., Mike got out of his car and waited at the main entrance for the lone Christine 55 to pull up. Just then, I saw a car pull into the parking lot. It was Angela's Audi, and I watched as she nervously approached Mike. Now I was staring at the laptop, waiting for her to speak. How I didn't throw up again, I still don't know. She walked over to Mike, smiled nervously, and asked cautiously, "Are you Ben?" Mike replied, "Yes, and you must be Lone Christine 55? I could see that she was nowhere near as confident as her online profile suggested and was actually nervous. Mike followed the script and asked if she wanted a coffee at the bar or even something stronger, even though it was only 10 in the morning. She nodded, and they went off to find a seat at a small table. Mike started to ask what she would like to drink, and she asked for an Irish coffee. They both sat in nervous silence until their drinks were brought to them, and then Angela spoke up. "Ben, I'm afraid I can't go for it." She looked at Mike, and on the monitor I could see tears rolling down her cheeks. "I was never actually going to date anyone, and I even texted you today asking you not to be here. I see on the app that you didn't read my message, and I wouldn't be so cruel as to just leave you here. That wouldn't be fair, and you seem nice. So, can I explain, please?" Mike asked her to continue, but she burst into tears. He gave her a tissue, and after calming down, she slowly spoke again. "I came to the site out of curiosity. I like talking about sex dirty and openly. It was interesting how a man would react, but I was never going to follow through. It was pure fantasy. In fact, at that moment, I was stirring the pot and couldn't have looked less sexy." "I see," Mike said. "Well, what about the room I booked and paid for?" "Oh, Ben, I'm so sorry. Let me give you the money. I don't want you to pay the bill because of my stupidity," she almost begged. I sensed Mike was playing her and using his long-time interviewing skills to get as much out of her as he could. "So, what about the husband you love but no longer desire?" he asks, looking her straight in the eye. "I love him very much, and he's just as sexy now as the day I met him. We wouldn't do anything to hurt each other, and I'm sorry, Ben, but as attractive as you are, I won't go to the room with you tonight or any other day. We've both had a few personal issues that have affected our relationship, but it's all sorted out now, and all we want is each other. I'm sorry, Ben, and I hope you find the romance you want, but it can't be with me." And with that, Angela stood up, drank her Irish coffee in one gulp, and walked out of the hotel. Mike waited 10 minutes before joining me in the car. He asked if I had seen and heard everything, and I confirmed that it was clear as day. Mike said I should drive home and talk to my wife. I was still stunned, but as relieved as I had been during my first conversation with Dr. Brown, so I just nodded, unable to speak. On the way, we agreed that we would keep our operation a secret, unless it became necessary to reveal our deception in the future. As we pulled up to the house, I saw Angela's car in the driveway. I turned to Mike and thanked him. He only smiled, shook my hand, and told me to leave. When I entered the house, Angela was in her room, flooding with tears. She looked at me and literally threw herself at me, hugging me as hard as one could imagine. "What's the matter?" I asked. "Why did you come back so quickly from your endless brunch with the girls?" "Something came up, Sam. I had to take care of something, so I had to cancel brunch. I'm so glad you're home, but I have to tell you something, and I'm afraid you're going to hate me. I had a crazy fantasy, and I stopped her before she could finish her sentence and told her that everyone has secret fantasies. "But why are you crying, honey?" I asked. "Fantasies don't hurt anyone. I watch movies and fantasize about models, but I would never do anything to hurt you. I know you won't hurt me either, so keep your fantasies private. I don't mind, and I don't need to know them." I smiled and wiped her tears away. Angela then said, "I was thinking about your nightmare. I had a similar nightmare where I thought I was losing you. It was horrible, and I couldn't get it out of my head. Also, I started taking the pills the doctor prescribed. They should give me my sexual appetite back, but they might also make me even more emotional and irrational than usual." "Well then," I said, "maybe we should go upstairs and play out a real fantasy." She looked up at me, and I saw the sad expression on her face turn almost immediately into a sly smile. "Oh, Sam, you have no idea how much you mean to me." "Then you better show it to me," I suggested as we went upstairs to our bedroom. She looked right at me, tilted her head slightly, and put her finger to her lips, like a puzzled mathematician pondering a quadratic equation. "Wait here, Sam. Put on some music and give me 5 minutes. I need to change." And with that, she left for our bathroom. I turned on the music like she asked and sat on the bed waiting for Angela to return. She looked absolutely stunning when she came out of the bathroom. "Wow!" was all I could say. We made love like we were in a brand new relationship, and both of us had at least 2 climaxes. Good thing there was still a towel there. After that, we just held each other until we heard Jessica come through the front door after school. I yelled that we were both upstairs, but Jessica just laughed and yelled that we shouldn't stop because of her, but not to make any noise either since she had homework. She is a very sassy, and smart girl, just like her mom. That meeting between Lone Christine, 55 inches, and Ben we never talked about. Angela never found out that Ben was actually Mike, and her profile disappeared from the cheating site within hours. 6 or so weeks later, we are working on our relationship, and I am very happy to report that Angela's pills are definitely having the desired effect. The only thing I want now is for our secret fantasies to remain fantasies. As for our shared fantasies, so be it. I was sitting there watching TV. USC was playing Nebraska. It was a game approaching the fourth quarter. Without Reggie Bush and Lendell White, USC had a bad offense. I noticed my wife coming out of the kitchen. She had a sour look on her face. She always seems to have a sour look on her face lately. 2 months ago, our youngest had just left for college, and for the first time in 18 years, we were alone with each other. I think every time we are alone together, the look on her face changes. My name is Bill Jackson, and I am 44 years old and live in sunny Orange County, California. My wife Sheila has spent most of her adult life as a homemaker raising 3 children. About a year ago, she decided to return to work. It was during this time that I began to notice subtle changes in her attitude. The frequency of sex began to slowly decrease. I never really paid much attention to it. I just figured it was normal when you were married for 22 years. Shortly after she started working, she joined a 24-hour fitness gym. She wanted to get in shape. I thought it was a great idea, so I started going to the gym regularly, too. I need to lose a few pounds. I spent too much time sitting at a desk. I needed to do something to perk myself up. I feel better working out early in the morning before I get to work. I seem to have more energy at that time of day. If I worked out in the evening, I was usually too tired to enjoy it. My wife was the complete opposite. She hated getting up early and would either head out to work out during her long lunch break or leave right after work before she got home. I began to realize that our schedules made us strangers in our own home. We had always participated in school and sports activities for the kids, but now that the kids were gone, it was obvious that we had very little in common. I could see us steadily drifting away from each other into our own worlds. I tried my best to remedy the situation, but with little success. I suggested movie nights, dinner dates, cruises, but nothing seemed to pique her interest. I knew my marriage was in trouble and divorce loomed on the horizon. All that was missing was the trigger to set it in motion. It was frustrating waiting for the other shoe to drop and knowing that I wouldn't be able to stop the inevitable. The look on Sheila's face when I was in her presence seemed to grow more sour each week. Finally, one day I asked her if something was bothering her and if she wanted to talk about it. She turned and looked at me and said, "I'm unhappy." When I asked why she wasn't happy, she turned away and said she didn't know. I wasn't being a fool. I know that one guy's good girl can be another guy's bad girl, so my wife might not be as innocent and faithful as she was in Death Do Us Part. I seriously doubted that her sex drive had diminished in any way. Her loss of sexual desire for me probably meant that she had either found someone else or was close, and maybe even thought she had married the wrong guy. Her depression from hanging out with me could be due to her temporarily losing the high she gets from hanging out with the guy she slept with. I wonder how many soulmates she's already slept with in her search for Mr. Best. She probably assumed that I was unaware of the real possibility of her having an affair and her disinterest in having sex with me, and that she was a good girl in my eyes. I don't think she ever knew me to underestimate me like that. I knew I couldn't let her play with me anymore. It was time to take action. She was easy to catch. I hid several small voice-activated voice recorders around the house and under the seat of her car. I also installed a GPS in her car so I would always know where she was. It only took a couple days to find out who she was dating, where and when. The guy's name was Bob Martin. He was married, had 2 kids, and worked as a salesman in her office. I wasn't so much upset as I was disgusted by her actions. If Sheila had said to me, "Look, Bill, this isn't working anymore. I don't love you, the kids are gone, and I want to find someone else to spend my life with," I would have been upset and hurt, but I would have respected her for her honesty and moved on without any hostility. But that's not what she did. She snooped around behind my back looking for a replacement, clinging to the security and lifestyle I provided. She made my life miserable because of her sour attitude. She removed me from my marital obligation to provide my partner with sex, and she broke her marriage vows because of her own selfish actions. No, I will not go quietly into the night. The punishment will fit the crime. Now it was up to me to decide what it would be. Time was on my side, and I could strike unexpectedly on my own terms and on my own turf. A few days had passed, and she had already met him twice more. Having sex and getting horny must have been fun, but all good things come to an end sometime. I ruled out murder. It would be too easy, and they'd be dead without a lengthy punishment. No, it had to be something that would be such an embarrassment that they could no longer continue their jobs or live in this town. I had to come up with something that the newspapers could spend more than one day with and turn them into the laughing stock of society. I spent a couple days thinking about different courses of action and working through different scenarios. I finally realized what I was going to do. The next day I told Sheila that I had a dentist appointment and would not be going to work this morning. I waited until my faithful wife left for work and then went to her computer. I downloaded her address file into Outlook and uploaded it to my laptop. I then created a mailing list consisting of many of her company's employees, her friends, co-workers, and her family members. That way, with a few keystrokes, I could email any file I wanted. I went to the bank and closed all joint accounts and credit cards. I took all the money and transferred it to accounts in the Cayman Islands. She would get a share of the house, so we would have an equal distribution. I then retrieved the hidden voice-activated voice recorders. Her one-way conversation told me they were going to meet at noon at Motel 6 to sleep all day. This was the chance I'd been waiting for. I need something to quickly scare them into submission, so I packed my Colt 45 automatic in a small bag. That should do the trick. Then I threw some other necessities into the small bag and a bottle of extremely effective and fast-acting cherry-flavored laxative. Then I headed for the motel. There was only one in town, and about 1-2 block away was a Starbucks. It was the perfect place to wait and watch the traffic. I pulled out my computer to keep an eye on her car and started waiting. As it turned out, I didn't need a GPS. I saw her car pass around 11:50 a.m., so I got out and watched her pull into the motel parking lot. I grabbed my bag and laptop and headed across the street toward the motel. I saw her head straight for room 6. I saw him let her in. I gave them about 10 minutes. I entered the motel and walked up to the room. I knocked on the door and yelled, "It's the police! Open up now!" I heard the door chain jingle and the door opened. As the door opened, I pushed it open with my shoulder and the guy landed on his ass. He wasn't expecting someone to bust through the door. Sheila was lying on the bed naked and aghast when she saw me. I hit the guy over the head with my .45 and told him to lie face up on the bed, and if he moved, he was dead. I opened my bag and pulled out a roll of duct tape and tossed it to Sheila. She was sobbing hysterically. I told her to shut up unless she wanted me to shoot her too. I said, "You whore, duct tape his hands and feet to the bedposts. Do it now." I pointed the gun at her and told her that if she made a single sound, she was finished. When she finished tying up her lover, I told Sheila to lie on her back on top of him, placing her ass on his chest next to his face. I then placed a couple pillows on his legs so Sheila could lay her head in an elevated position. I then taped Sheila's legs to the bedpost with duct tape. They were both scared to death because they thought I was going to kill them. I got out a bottle of laxatives. I had removed the label beforehand, so she had no idea what it was. I told her to drink it, and if she spit it out, she would regret it. She finished the bottle like a good girl, and I told her it was cherry-flavored sparkling water, and she had nothing to worry about. She seemed to relax. I told her to lean back on the 2 pillows. I wanted her head and chest to be elevated above her stomach. Then I finished taping her arms to the bedposts with duct tape. I pulled out my smartphone and took a couple pictures of the cute couple. Then I pulled my laptop out of my bag and loaded the pictures into it. I have a satellite connection on my laptop through Sprint, so I can access the internet from just about anywhere. I then went over and grabbed her panties off the floor, stuffed them in my lover's mouth, and taped his mouth shut with duct tape. I grabbed his boxers, walked over to my wife, stuffed them in her mouth, and duct taped her mouth shut. Then I went into the bathroom, got a large glass of water, and sat down in the chair. I drank the water quickly. I was thirsty. Well, I looked at the clock and estimated that I had about 10 more minutes to go. I turned on the TV and couldn't believe my luck. The Jerry Springer show was on, and they had two fugitives fighting each other over some skinny guy with no teeth. Unbelievable. Just at that moment, I heard my wife start moaning into her boxers. She started twirling back and forth and seemed to be in some discomfort. And then it happened. It was an explosion of epic proportions. The feces burst out of her ass, landing right on her lover's face. I said to myself, "This woman must not have pooped in a couple days." I told her that it was really disgusting and she should go to the bathroom more often. I took a couple more pictures. I had what I needed. I loaded the photos into my laptop, opened Outlook, attached the 4 photos to an email, put "Scammers Caught Red-Handed" as the subject line, attached a mailing list, and hit send. Maybe it was cruel and unusual punishment, maybe not. I guess it depends on who the judge is. I then packed my laptop and other essentials. I said, "Hasta la vista, wifey, and have a happy life. You shit on me and our marriage, so I thought it might be nice for Bob to experience what it's like to be a turd, too. By the way, you're shitting in public now, so have fun living and working in this town." Shortly before I flew out to the Cayman Islands, I pulled out my cell phone, called the motel, and told the clerk that there was a couple in room 6 who urgently needed his help. I told him, "I think the shit has hit the fan." I wonder if Sheila and Bob continued the affair? Well, if so, it must be true love. But if I know her, it won't be long before she shits on him again. Life goes on.